After you've sent your sample materials to the lab for analysis, they'll return the sample results. So how do you go about actually inputting them into your report? Well, first let's take a look at how the report preview might look before you've actually put the results in. Here you can see I've got a couple of errors. It's saying sample results 001 and 002 haven't yet been added. In this case we default to Crocidolite to give it that high material score, just in case you accidentally issue this to your clients. It's like a worst case scenario for the report. Once we put the sample results in, these errors should disappear. So to key these sample results in, it's kind of like a two-step process. Let's head back to the dashboard and I'll show you what we need to do. Well, first of all, we need to import the bulk certificate. You'll see I've already got the attachments section open. I'm going to tap the import PDF button and I'm going to select the certificate from my desktop. So say select all and submit. So the bulk certificate's now been imported. You'll notice as well that this item has been highlighted in red for review. So that means there's something still to do. I'm going to tap on this and you can see the type still hasn't been entered. Now when you import something, we don't know what the type of document it is. So you have to select the relevant one from the drop down. I'm going to say bulk sample test certificates. It's also useful to specify the paper size and orientation. I'm going to hit save. Now this bulk certificate just had a single page. If there'd been multiple pages in that PDF, they would have each created separate attachments. But in this case, it was actually very simple. Now, if we view that report again, we'll see we've got the bulk samples actually embedded within the report, like so. Now the next step is to actually key in the sample results manually. This updates any inspection records so that you'll know and your client will know which items contain asbestos and which ones do not. So to do this, head over to the sample results section, add a new item. I'm going to say 001 came back as Crocidolite. It's important to note that the sample ID you use here should match exactly what you've got in the inspection table. If it doesn't, you're going to get further errors on the report, which will keep you right. So for example, if you had 01 in the inspection items and you had 001 in the sample results, those two things aren't technically the same because of that extra 0. So you need to make sure that they do match exactly. By the way, you can also put letters in the sample results. It's not just numbers. So that's another thing just to be aware of. If you use things like hyphens or whatever, then make sure they're also carried through to the sample results. It needs to match exactly like I say. So let's save this. I'm going to head back over to the preview. And if we head back to the start where we had those errors, you'll notice that that first one should have disappeared. So the error regarding 001 is now gone. Likewise for 002, it's the same process. Type in the sample, pop in the result and hit save. Back to the report, you'll see that second error has disappeared. Now another thing to note here on the report is that any inspection items referenced in that sample would have been updated. So you can see here the scoring will have changed from what we had before. Like I say, it's that high material score, worst case scenario until you put your sample results in. As soon as you put the sample results in, everything will be calculated correctly throughout the report based on the sample result you've put in. One last thing I'd like to mention is when you're doing this process of adding your sample results in, you may want to look at some of our inspection table features. So if you're wanting to first of all just check exactly what it is you're adding the sample result for, you can expand out the inspection table, full screen it like so, and you may just want to actually have a look and see which samples are being updated. So you can see here, if I scroll to the right, we've got the sample ID column and we have a sample 001 which is cross-referenced here and a sample 002 which has been taken elsewhere within the building. Now rather than having to scroll left and right to see this information, you might want to pin this column to the left. This can be helpful during QC because this remains fixed on the left hand side and you can sort of scroll and see some more information about that. So if I want to check the location, I can see it here now. If I want to scroll further to the right and see how it was taken, I can see that here. So pinning the columns is useful during QC. Another thing you can do is actually group by sample ID. So you can see here we have two sample 001s. That's the sample and the cross-reference. We have one item which relates to sample ID 002. And then we have two items which don't have any sample ID, blank essentially. Now we have separate tutorials on mastering tables and all the things you can do here. I would suggest checking those out if you get a chance. But I hope this has been a useful tutorial in adding sample results to your asbestos survey report.